Once upon a time, there was a girl named Grace. She was the first daughter of a poor widow who struggled to raise 5 children. Grace's mother was a hawker, and every day, she would wake up before dawn, carrying a heavy tray of fruits on her head, walking from street to street under the burning sun, hoping to sell enough to put food on the table. Grace had grown up watching her mother suffer, sacrificing everything just to make sure her children went to school. Her father had died when she was only 8, leaving them in a world that cared very little for the poor, but her mother never gave up. She worked hard, believing that one day, at least one of her children would lift the family out of poverty. Grace held onto that hope too. She worked hard in school, believing that education was the key to a better future. She endured hunger, humiliation, and nights of studying by candlelight, all in the hope that one day, she would graduate, get a good job, and take care of her mother. But life had other plans. After university, Grace had searched endlessly for a job. She had attended interview after interview, only to be rejected every time. She had sent out hundreds of applications, yet no one called her back. Months passed, and the little savings her mother had kept for her transport to interviews ran out. Grace was left with nothing but frustration and disappointment. And then, one morning, everything changed. It started like any other day. The house was small, just one cramped room in a crowded neighborhood. The walls were thin, and the air smelled of unwashed clothes and leftover food. Her younger siblings had already gone to school, and her mother had just returned from the market, carrying a heavy basket of fruits to sell for the day. But as she set the basket down, she suddenly pressed a hand to her forehead and groaned. "Grace, my head," she whispered, sinking onto the small wooden bench by the corner. Grace rushed to her side, her heart pounding. "Mama, what is it?" Her mother tried to wave her off. "It's just a little headache. I'll be fine." But Grace wasn't convinced. Her mother's face was pale, her breathing unsteady. She was sweating even though the morning air was still cool. "You can't go out like this," Grace said, her voice firm. "You need to rest." Her mother shook her head weakly. "If I don't sell these fruits today, they will spoil. And if they spoil, what will we eat tomorrow?" Grace felt her chest tighten. She looked at the basket of ripe fruits, fresh from the market. They had spent their last money to buy them. If they weren't sold today, they would rot, and there would be no money left to buy more. She took a deep breath. "I will sell them," she said. Her mother's eyes widened in surprise. "No, Grace, you can't. I can," Grace interrupted. She swallowed hard, knowing what this meant. She had spent her whole life avoiding the hawker's path, determined to make something better of herself. But today, there was no other choice. She reached for the tray and carefully balanced it on her head. It was heavier than she had expected, pressing down on her like the weight of her own shattered dreams. She stepped outside. The moment she did, she felt the stares. The other hawkers, the same ones who had watched her grow up, paused in their sales to gape at her. Then, the murmurs began. "So this is what a university degree is worth," someone laughed. "She thought she was better than us, but look at her now. School na scam, I told you all." The words cut deep, but Grace refused to react. She lifted her chin, steadied her shoulders, and took a step forward. She had a job to do. The voices of hawkers filled the air, some shouting the prices of their goods, others chasing after buses, waving their wares desperately at uninterested passengers. Cars honked impatiently, and the scent of roasted corn and fried snacks mixed with the dust and sweat of the evening hustle. Grace walked carefully, the tray of fruits still balanced on her head. Her feet ached, and her throat was dry from hours of calling out, trying to sell even a little. The humiliation of the day weighed on her shoulders, but she reminded herself why she was doing this. For Mama, for her siblings. She took a deep breath and wiped the sweat from her brow. Just as she was about to turn toward a quieter street, her attention was drawn to a woman standing near the road, rummaging through her large handbag. She was well dressed, probably a businesswoman or a banker, her gold wristwatch shining in the evening light. Her face was slightly tense, as though she was searching for something important. Grace watched as the woman pulled out a notepad, a pen, and then a small purse. But just as she took out a tissue, something else slipped from her bag, a small black pouch. It fell silently to the ground, unnoticed by the woman, blending into the dusty pavement. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Grace wasn't the only one who saw it. A group of hawkers nearby had also spotted the small bag. and in the split second before Grace could react, they rushed toward it. A wave of movement, a scramble, a desperate fight for possession. But Grace was faster. She darted forward, bending low as her fingers closed around the bag just before another hawker could snatch it. Her grip was firm. She straightened up quickly, pressing the pouch against her chest, her heart pounding. Immediately, murmurs filled the air. "Grace, open it," one hawker urged, excitement in his voice. "See if there's money inside," another whispered eagerly. "I saw 2 phones fall with it," a woman added, eyeing the bag greedily. "They must be expensive." "Grace, don't be a fool," a teenage hawker, no older than 17, said with a smirk. "This is a miracle. Do you know how much the Samsung phones cost? We can sell them, and you'll have enough money to stop hawking." Grace's hands tightened around the bag. She had seen the contents when she picked it up, to sleek smartphones and a thick bundle of cash. Probably the woman's entire day's earnings. Her heart raced as she looked back at the woman, who was still unaware that she had lost anything. She was now searching her bag more frantically, patting her pockets in confusion. Grace took a step forward, but before she could move any further, someone grabbed her wrist. It was Rebecca, one of the girls who had mocked her earlier. Her grip was tight, her eyes shining with greed. "What do you think you're doing?" Rebecca hissed. "Are you really going to return it?" "Yes," Grace said firmly. Rebecca scoffed. "Are you stupid? Look at your life, Grace. You have no job. Your mother is sick, your siblings are hungry. And here, right in your hands, is your breakthrough. Money, phones your way out of this suffering, and you want to return it." Grace swallowed hard. Every word Rebecca said was true. She had no job, no money, no certainty of what tomorrow would bring. She had spent the entire day being laughed at, humiliated for hawking after going to university. And now, she held the answer in her hands. A way out. Her fingers trembled as she looked down at the pouch. She thought of her mother, weak at home. She thought of her siblings, who had gone to school with only watery pap in their stomachs. What if she kept it? No one would know. She could sell the phones. She could use the money to feed her family, maybe even start a small business. She squeezed her eyes shut. No, it would never be hers. She had been raised to believe that taking what did not belong to you was a sin. No matter how difficult life became, she could not stain her hands with dishonesty. When she opened her eyes, she met Rebecca's furious glare. "Let go of me," Grace said, her voice steady. Rebecca's fingers dug into her skin. "Grace, don't be a fool." "I'm not a fool," Grace whispered. "I just refuse to lose myself." With a determined breath, she yanked her wrist free. The crowd of hawkers watched in disbelief as Grace stepped away from them, moving toward the woman. At first, the woman didn't notice her. She was still frantically searching her bag. Grace took a deep breath and spoke softly. "Excuse me, ma'am." The woman looked up, confused. Grace held out the black pouch. "This fell from your bag." For a moment, the woman just stared at her. Then, with shaking hands, she took the pouch and unzipped it. Her eyes widened as she saw the contents: her phones, her money, everything intact. Her lips parted, disbelief washing over her face. You found it." Grace nodded. A long silence stretched between them. Then, without warning, the woman burst into tears. "Oh my God! I had lost all hope," she cried, pressing the pouch to her chest. "I thought it was gone forever. I never thought I'd see it again." Grace simply smiled. "It was never mine to keep." The woman looked at her, eyes glistening with gratitude. She pulled out a handful of cash and tried to press it into Grace's hands. "Please, take this as a thank you." Grace shook her head. "No, ma'am, I didn't return it for money." The woman stared at her for a long time, as if struggling to understand the kind of person standing before her. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was the kind of smile that came from deep within, a smile of genuine admiration. "God bless you," she whispered. "God bless you richly." Grace simply nodded. As the woman walked away, Grace turned back to face the other hawkers. Their expressions were a mixture of shock, amusement, and disappointment. Some shook their heads. Others whispered to each other, clearly unable to comprehend why she had let go of such a golden opportunity. They never returned any missing items to the owners. Rebecca simply scoffed. "You'll regret this, Grace," she muttered before walking away. Grace exhaled. Maybe she would regret it. Maybe she wouldn't. But for now, she had something more valuable than money. She had peace. And deep inside her, a small voice whispered, "One day, this decision will come back to you. One day, it will all make sense." Grace sat outside their small one-room apartment, peeling oranges for her younger siblings. Her mother lay on the thin mattress in the corner, still weak but managing a soft smile as she watched Grace work. "You did well today, my daughter," she murmured, her voice tired but full of pride. "Integrity is a rare thing these days." Grace smiled faintly. "Mama, some people don't think so." She thought about the way the hawkers had stared at her when she returned the pouch. The way they had whispered behind her back, shaking their heads as if she had done something incredibly foolish. She could still hear their words. "You'll regret this, Grace. You had a chance to change your life, and you threw it away. Who in this country returns to brand new Samsung phones? Even pastors wouldn't." She had ignored them then, but their voices still echoed in her head. She was exhausted not just physically, but emotionally. The next day, as she walked toward the marketplace, she spotted her friends huddled together under the shade of an old mango tree. Rebecca, Cynthia, and Linda, the same girls she had grown up with, the same ones who had mocked her for hawking despite having a university degree. They saw her coming and immediately burst into laughter. "Look who it is," Rebecca smirked, folding her arms. "Our very own saintly Grace." Cynthia clapped her hands dramatically, the most honest girl in the whole world. A girl so pure she returned to Samsung phones and free money. Linda shook her head, feigning sadness. "Ah, Grace, you really disappointed me. You are not wise at all." Grace kept walking, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her react. But Rebecca stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Tell me something, Grace," she said, tilting her head. "Do you enjoy suffering? Do you like watching your mother struggle? Because that's the only explanation for why you did what you did yesterday." Grace clenched her jaw but said nothing. Rebecca laughed. "How much money do you even have in your account? Do you have 5,000 naira to your name? Even if you did, how long will it last? You could have taken that money, sold the phones, and built something for yourself. You could have bought medicine for your mother. But no, our holy Grace decided to return it." Cynthia shook her head in disbelief. "And you even refused the woman's reward. You didn't even collect a single kobo. Do you think honesty will feed you?" Linda smirked. "Let me tell you something, Grace, this world is not fair. The only people who make it in life are those who take what they can, when they can. That's how things work in this country." Grace finally exhaled. "I don't believe that." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Of course, you don't. That's why you're still hawking fruits, after getting a degree. Look around you, Grace. The people who make it aren't the ones who play fair. Look at politicians, look at businessmen, look at pastors. Everybody is cutting corners. And here you are, acting like you're better than us." Grace's hands tightened into fists, but she forced herself to remain calm. "I never said I was better than anyone," she said quietly. "I just believe that doing the right thing is more important than money." Rebecca scoffed. "Then you'll remain poor for the rest of your life." Cynthia shook her head. "You think God will come down from heaven to reward you for your honesty? Keep dreaming." Linda sighed dramatically. "You wasted your university education, Grace. 4 years of suffering for nothing. No job, no money, no future." Grace felt the sting of their words, but she refused to let them see it. Instead, she lifted her chin and looked at them one by one. "Maybe you're right," she admitted. "Maybe this world is unfair. Maybe good people don't always win. But I'd rather struggle with a clean conscience than succeed by stealing from someone else." Rebecca scoffed, shaking her head. "You are beyond help." Grace simply smiled. "And you lack faith." She walked past them, feeling their eyes burning into her back. She knew they would continue laughing, continue mocking her. But she also knew something they didn't. A good name was worth more than stolen riches. Her mother's words rang in her ears. "One day, my daughter, God will remember you for your honesty." She just didn't know that day would come sooner than she expected. That night, long after the laughter of her so-called friends had faded into the darkness and the world had grown quiet, Grace lay on the thin mattress she shared with her younger sister, staring at the cracked ceiling. The room was dim, the only source of light being the dull glow of a dying kerosene lamp at the corner of the room. The air was thick with the scent of ripe fruits, the very ones her mother had struggled to sell earlier that day. The words of her friends echoed in her mind, sharp as knives. "You wasted your university education, Grace. You threw away your chance to change your life. Who in this country returns such a thing? Even pastors wouldn't." She squeezed her eyes shut, as if that would silence the voices, but they only grew louder. For the first time since she had handed over that black pouch to its rightful owner, doubt crept into her heart. Had she made a mistake? She turned on her side, clutching the thin pillow beneath her head. The room was silent except for the steady breathing of her siblings, curled up beside their mother on the other mattress. The sight of them should have reassured her, but instead, it made her chest tighten with uncertainty. They had nothing. The walls of their home were so thin that when it rained, water seeped through the cracks. Their mattress was old and lumpy, barely providing any comfort. Their kerosene lamp was almost empty, and there was no money to buy more fuel. And yet, she had returned money that could have changed all of this. Her mind drifted back to all the times life had been unkind to her family. She remembered the day she had lost her own money at the market. It wasn't much, just 3,000 naira, but it was all she had. She had been so sure that someone would return it. She had searched the entire market, asking every vendor, every passerby. But all she got were blank stares and dismissive shrugs. Some had even laughed at her naivety. If you drop money in this country, forget it. You will never see it again. She had walked home that day, tears burning her eyes, because that money was meant to buy food for her siblings. That night, they had gone to bed hungry. And then there was the time her mother had lost her phone in a bus. It wasn't a fancy phone, just a small button phone she used to take orders from customers. But it was important. Grace had called the number over and over again, praying that the person who found it would have the decency to return it. But the phone had been switched off, gone forever. No one had returned it. The world had never been kind to them. So why had she been kind to it? Why had she been the one to do the right thing when the world had never done the same for her? Her stomach twisted as the doubt grew heavier. Maybe her friends were right. Maybe she really was a fool. Maybe she had thrown away her one chance to break free from this life of suffering. She covered her face with her hands, a deep sigh escaping her lips. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder just for a moment what life would have been like if she had kept the bag. She could have taken the money, sold the phones, and started something small for herself. She could have paid off some debts, bought her mother proper medication, maybe even gotten a better place for them to live. Wouldn't that have been a smarter choice? Wouldn't that have been fair? Tears pricked her eyes. But then, as quickly as the thoughts came, another voice spoke inside her. No, Grace, that is not who you are. She opened her eyes, staring at the wooden ceiling above her. You are not like the people who took your money. You are not like the one who stole your mother's phone. You are better than that. She sat up slowly, hugging her knees to her chest. It does not matter what others do. It does not matter if the world is unfair. If I start taking what does not belong to me, then how am I any different from those who stole from me? Her mother stirred in her sleep, shifting slightly on the mattress. Grace turned to look at her. The woman who had struggled her entire life, who had worked under the sun selling fruits just to put food on their table. Her mother had taught her better. No matter how hard life was, they did not steal. No matter how much they suffered, they remained honest. And if there was one thing Grace knew for sure, it was that she would never sell her soul for temporary relief. She lay back down, staring at the ceiling, her heart a little steadier now. She had done the right thing. Maybe life had not rewarded her yet. Maybe it never would. But at least she could sleep knowing that she had not become what she despised. At least she could hold her head up high. At least she still had her integrity. And that was something no amount of money could buy. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to drift into sleep, unaware that the very decision she was doubting would soon change her life forever. The news of the job interview spread quickly among Grace and her friends. It was the kind of opportunity she had been waiting for, a chance to finally step out of the endless cycle of struggle and change her family's condition. But as the excitement settled, a new wave of worrying crept into her mind. She had nothing to wear. It wasn't that she didn't own clothes, she did. But none of them were suitable for an interview. Her only pair of formal trousers had started to fade, and the blouse she had worn to her last interview had lost a button. She had worn it so many times that even she was embarrassed by it. Grace hesitated before voicing her concern to her friends. She knew how they would react, but she had no one else to talk to. I don't even have a good outfit for the interview, she admitted one evening as they gathered outside, chatting about their dreams and the jobs they had applied for. Her friends burst into laughter, the kind that wasn't meant to be kind. One of them, Patricia, shook her head, smirking. You see, if only you had sense that day, you would have bought yourself a nice suit with the money in that bag. Another girl, Esther, crossed her arms, Even if you didn't want to take the whole thing, you could have just picked a little. Just enough to get what you need. Who would have blamed you? The others nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with mockery. Grace swallowed hard. She had expected this reaction, but it still stung. I don't regret what I did, she said firmly, though deep inside, she wished she didn't have to defend herself over and over again. Patricia rolled her eyes. Of course, you don't. But now look at you. No decent clothes. How do you expect them to take you seriously when you show up looking like a hawker? Esther leaned closer. If I were you, I would have taken that bag and thanked God for sending me a miracle. Instead, you want to keep suffering in righteousness. They all laughed again, the sound ringing in her ears. Grace clenched her fists. She had been patient with them for too long, but she was tired of the mockery, tired of the reminders of what she could have done if she had chosen dishonesty. I don't want to hear it anymore, she said sharply, her voice cutting through their laughter. I will wear what I have. And if it's not good enough for them, then so be it. Her words silenced them for a moment, but Patricia only shrugged. Suit yourself. But don't blame us when you walk in there and they send you right back out. Grace turned away from them, her heart heavy but her resolve unshaken. She knew she wouldn't be the best-dressed candidate at that interview. She knew that her faded trousers and worn-out blouse wouldn't impress anyone. But if there was one thing she would bring to that interview, it was her dignity. She would go as she was, and whatever happened, she would hold her head high. The morning of the interview arrived with a strange mix of excitement and fear. Grace woke up before dawn, long before the first rooster crowed, and lay in bed staring at the dark ceiling. She could hear the faint rustling of her mother in the next room, preparing for the day's hawking. Her heart pounded. This was it. This was the moment she had prayed for, the moment she had waited for after so many failed interviews, so many rejections. But now that the day had come, fear clung to her like a second skin. She turned to her side, her eyes landing on the neatly folded clothes on the small wooden chair beside her bed. Her only interview clothes. The faded trousers, the old blouse with the missing button. She had done her best to make them look presentable. She had washed them the night before, pressing them carefully with an old iron that barely got hot enough. But no matter how much she tried, they still looked worn. She sighed, gripping the thin bedsheet between her fingers. Would they laugh at her when she walked into that office? Would they take one look at her and dismiss her before she even had the chance to speak? A lump formed in her throat. She thought of her friends' cruel words, their mocking laughter. She thought of the bag she had returned, of the money inside it that could have solved all these problems. She could have bought a brand new suit. She could have walked into that interview with confidence, instead of shame. For a split second, she questioned herself again. Did I make a mistake? But then, she shook her head. No, I did the right thing. She refused to allow doubt to steal this moment from her. She pushed herself up from the bed, blinking back tears. This was not the time for regrets. She had come too far. Her mother's voice broke into her thoughts. Grace? She turned to see her mother standing by the door, her face lined with exhaustion, but her eyes filled with something else bright. Good morning, Mama, Grace said softly. Her mother stepped inside, her gaze falling on the clothes Grace had prepared. She smiled gently. You are ready. Grace nodded, though she didn't feel ready. Yes, Mama. Her mother walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, reaching for her hand. I may not have money to buy you fine clothes, my daughter, but what you have is enough. You have a good heart, and that is more valuable than anything. Grace's throat tightened. She looked at her mother, at the woman who had struggled and suffered just to keep her in school, who had never once given up despite the hardships. I just want to make things better for us, Mama, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't want you to suffer anymore. Her mother squeezed her hand. You will, my daughter. I believe in you. Tears stung Grace's eyes, but she held them back. She would not cry today. She would be strong. With a deep breath, she stood up, took her clothes, and got dressed. The walk to the interview venue was nerve-wracking. She had barely eaten breakfast, her stomach too tight with nerves to hold anything down. The city was already alive, with buses honking, traders shouting, and the sun creeping higher into the sky. As she approached the tall glass building where the interview was being held, her heart pounded even harder. It was huge, the kind of company she had dreamed of working for. The kind of company that could change her life. The entrance was filled with people, young men and women in neatly pressed suits, polished shoes, and confident smiles. They looked like they belonged there. And then there was her faded trousers, her worn-out blouse. her scuffed shoes. She swallowed hard. She could feel their eyes on her as she walked past, as if they knew she didn't fit in. She overheard two girls whispering, "Did she really come for this interview dressed like that? Ah, maybe she just came to ask for directions." They laughed, the sound slicing through her like a blade. Grace clenched her fists, forcing herself to keep walking. She would not turn back. Inside, the waiting area was filled with nervous applicants, all holding brown envelopes containing their credentials. Grace took a seat in the corner, gripping her own envelope tightly. She had nothing but her certificate and faith. People went in and out of the interview room. Some came out smiling, others looking defeated. The tension in the air was thick. And then, Grace Williams, her heart nearly stopped. She stood, her legs shaking as she walked toward the office. The moment she stepped inside, she barely took in the elegant room, the large desk, the polished floors. She was too nervous to notice anything except the woman sitting across from her. And then, the woman gasped. Grace blinked. She wasn't expecting that. "You." The woman stood up suddenly, her eyes wide with shock. "You're the hawker." Grace froze. The hawker. Before she could even process what was happening, the woman came around the desk, staring at her in disbelief. "You're the one who found my bag that day. The one who returned my money and phones." Realization hit Grace like lightning. It was her, the woman whose bag she had returned, the woman whose money she could have taken but chose not to. A lump formed in Grace's throat. She had not expected this, not today, not here. The woman looked at her for a long moment before suddenly smiling. A warm, grateful smile. Then, without hesitation, she turned to the other panel members and said, "She's hired." The room went silent. Grace's eyes widened. What?" The woman nodded. "I don't need an interview to know who she is. I already know the kind of person she is." The other panel members looked at each other in surprise but said nothing. It was clear that the woman's words carried weight. The woman turned back to Grace. "You didn't take what wasn't yours that day. And today, I'm giving you what is rightfully yours, the position of my personal assistant." Grace's legs nearly gave out. Her lips trembled. "Emma, man, are you serious?" The woman smiled even wider, completely. Tears filled Grace's eyes. For the first time in a long time, her honesty had paid off, and just like that, her life changed forever. Grace walked out of the office in a daze, clutching her brown envelope like it was the most precious thing in the world. Her heart pounded so hard that she could hear it in her ears. She had to remind herself to breathe. She had walked into that interview with nothing but hope and fear, no connections, no fancy clothes, no polished confidence like the others. Yet, she had walked out with something she never imagined she would get: a job. A real job. A job that could change her life, her family's life. It felt surreal. She barely noticed the other applicants as she made her way outside. She was too overwhelmed to care if they were watching her, too caught up in the storm of emotions swirling inside her. As she was walking along the express road, she heard a familiar voice. "Grace, Grace, wait." She turned. It was her friend, Lisa, the same Lisa who had laughed at her for returning the bag. Lisa was breathless, her high heels clicking against the pavement as she hurried over. Her expression was one of disbelief. "How far?" Lisa asked. "The woman hired me," Grace replied. Did I just hear right? Did that woman just hire you?" Grace swallowed, still trying to find her voice. "Why, yes." Lisa's eyes widened. She looked Grace up and down, as if trying to process what had just happened. "You mean, you got the job, just like that?" Grace nodded slowly. "She's the owner of the bag I returned that day." Lisa's mouth fell open. She stared at Grace, and for the first time, there was no mockery in her eyes, just shock. Another one of their friends, Tina, walked up to them, having overheard their conversation. Wait. So because of that bag, she just gave you the job, no interview, just like that?" "Yes," Grace said, her voice stronger this time. The two girls exchanged stunned glances. Lisa shook her head. "I can't believe this. I told you that you were stupid for returning that bag, but now, look at you." Tina exhaled sharply. "Grace, do you know what this means? This means you're about to start working in a big company. And, just imagine if you had taken the money that day. You wouldn't even be standing here now." Grace looked at them both, a small smile playing on her lips. "That's why I say doing the right thing is never a mistake." Lisa and Tina fell silent. For the first time, they had no sarcastic remarks, no teasing. Grace turned away, feeling the weight of victory in her chest. She had no time for their shock. She had to go home. She had to tell her mother. The walk home felt like a dream. Her legs could barely carry her, but she kept moving, her heart racing with anticipation. By the time she reached their small house, she was panting, but she didn't care. She pushed open the door, stepping inside. Her mother was sitting on the wooden chair, sorting out the fruits she would take to the market the next day. She looked up, her tired eyes softening at the sight of her daughter. "Grace, you're back," she said, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "How did it go?" Grace opened her mouth to speak, but the emotions hit her all at once. Her throat tightened, her chest ached. She dropped her brown envelope on the wooden table, fell to her knees, and let out a shaky breath. "Mama!" Her voice broke. Her mother frowned, concern flashing across her face. "Grace, what is it? What happened? Did they insult you? Did they?" "Mama, I got the job." The room fell silent. Her mother blinked, as if she hadn't heard her correctly. What? What did you say?" Tears slipped down Grace's cheeks. She smiled. "I got the job, Mama." Her mother gasped. For a moment, she just stared at Grace, her lips trembling, her hands frozen in the air. Then, she dropped the fruits she was holding. Before Grace could react, her mother lunged forward, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Oh, my daughter," her mother cried, her voice cracking with emotion. "Oh, thank you, God, thank you, God." Grace sank into her mother's arms, sobbing. All the struggles, all the hunger, all the times they had slept without food, all the days of hawking in the scorching sun, of watching her mother sacrifice everything for her children. It had finally paid off. Her mother rocked her, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "I knew it. I knew that your honesty would not go unrewarded. God sees everything, my child. And today, He has remembered us." Grace could barely breathe, overwhelmed by the depth of her mother's emotions. Her younger siblings, who had been playing outside, rushed into the room, staring at the scene before them. "What happened?" her little brother, Michael, asked, his small face filled with confusion. Their mother turned to them, her voice shaking with happiness. "Your sister has gotten a job." Their eyes widened. Then, they screamed in joy. They jumped on Grace, hugging her, laughing, celebrating. Their tiny voices filled the small house, drowning out all the pain, all the suffering, all the doubts that had once plagued Grace's heart. She had done the right thing, and now she was reaping the rewards. The morning air was crisp as Grace stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her dress, though not new, was neatly ironed. She had taken extra care to press out every wrinkle, making it look as professional as possible. Her shoes were the same old ones she had worn to countless interviews, but today, they didn't feel like the shoes of a desperate job seeker. They felt like the shoes of a working woman, a woman who had fought against all odds and won. She took a deep breath, adjusting the sleeves of her dress. The emotions swirling inside her were a mixture of excitement and fear. Would she do well? Would she make mistakes? Would she be able to meet the expectations of her new boss? Her mother's voice broke through her thoughts. "Grace, my daughter, you look beautiful." Grace turned to see her mother standing at the door, smiling at her with pride. Tears welled up in Grace's eyes. "Mama." Her mother stepped forward and cupped her face. "You are starting a new chapter today. Don't be afraid, my child. You are smart, you are hardworking, and you are honest. That is why you are here today. Hold on to that honesty. No matter what happens, never change who you are." Grace nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She bent down to take her mother's hands and kissed them. "Thank you, Mama, for everything." Her mother wiped her tears and smiled. "Now go, my dear. The whole world is waiting for you." The company was huge. Grace had never been in a place like this before. The air-conditioned lobby, the polished floors, the neatly dressed employees walking around with files in their hands, it felt like a different world. She clutched her handbag tightly, her heart racing. She wasn't just here for an interview. She was here to work. The receptionist smiled at her. "Good morning, ma'am. You must be Miss Grace. Ma'am is expecting you." Grace nodded nervously. "Yes, thank you." She followed the receptionist to a large office. The door was already open, and inside, sitting behind a grand desk, was the woman who had given her this opportunity, the woman whose bag she had returned. She looked up and smiled. "Grace, welcome to your first day." Grace exhaled, relief washing over her. "Thank you, ma'am." The woman gestured for her to sit. "I know this must all feel overwhelming, but don't worry. You will get used to it." Grace nodded, still unsure of what to say. The woman leaned forward, studying her. "Do you know why I hired you, Grace?" Grace hesitated. Because I returned your bag. The woman chuckled. That was the first reason. But after that, I did a little research on you. I spoke to the people who know you, your neighbors, some of your friends. Grace's breath caught in her throat. The woman's expression softened. Do you know what they said? That despite your struggles, you always refuse to take the easy way out. That you work hard. That you help your mother and your siblings. That you never give up. Tears pricked Grace's eyes. People like you are rare. Grace, the woman continued, that's why I hired you. Because I need someone like you by my side. Someone I can trust. Grace swallowed, her emotions overwhelming her. Thank you, Mom, she whispered. The woman smiled. Now, let me show you your office. Her office. Those words sounded so foreign, yet so beautiful. She followed the woman through the hallway until they stopped at a smaller office next to the main one. This is your space, the woman said, pushing the door open. Grace stepped inside and froze. The room was small but elegant. A desk, a chair, a laptop neatly placed in the center, a shelf stacked with files all hers. She turned to her boss, unable to stop the tears that spilled from her eyes. The woman chuckled softly. You're allowed to cry just this once. Grace laughed through her tears. This wasn't just a job. This was her chance at a new life. From hawker to career woman. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Grace poured her heart into her job. She learned quickly, worked hard, and always showed up early. Her boss was impressed. Grace, I've had many assistants, but none as dedicated as you, she said one day. Grace smiled, remembering how she had once struggled to find even the smallest job. One evening, as she left the office, she ran into Lisa and Tina outside. They looked at her, their eyes wide. Grace, Lisa gasped, look at you, you look different. Tina stepped forward. You even have a company badge now, is this really you? Grace smiled, adjusting the badge on her blouse. Yes, it's me. Lisa shook her head in disbelief. I still can't believe it. You, out of all of us, are the one who got a good job. And all because you returned that stupid bag. Grace chuckled. It wasn't stupid. Tina sighed. Grace, I won't lie to you. I admire you. I see now that honesty still pays. You did the right thing, and look where it got you. Lisa crossed her arms. I'm still in shock. Grace smiled. Sometimes the right path is the hardest. But in the end, it's always worth it. As she walked away, she felt lighter, happier, and prouder than ever. She had chosen the right path, and it had led her to greatness. One evening, after work, Grace sat with her mother outside their small home, watching the sunset. Mama, she said, soon, I will save enough money to get us a better place. Her mother smiled, her eyes filled with pride. I know you will, my child. Grace gazed at the sky, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had been through pain, doubt, and struggle, but she had never given up. And now, her story was just beginning. From a hawker to a career woman, her journey had only just begun.